Hello and welcome to another episode of Between the Studs. I'm your host Mark. Today I'm joined by Chris and another Mark from Old Gray Bricks fame. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. We're going to be talking about classic space. But first I want to hear about it. For those who don't know, what is Old Gray Bricks?
Old Gray Bricks is old, and we're gray, and we like bricks. That's about it. Yeah, it was just an effort, especially during the pandemic, for us to stay connected with our friends online, and a lot of us classic Lego fans, like Mark and I, we've known each other for 20 plus years, and so a way for us to stay engaged and also maybe bring the classic space stuff and everything, knowledge of that to a new generation. So,
yeah. Basically, it grew out of Zoom chats we were doing, myself and Chris and Dana and Matthew, and we were enjoying hanging out every Saturday talking online. During the pandemic we couldn't go anywhere, so just on the weekend we'd get online and talk and build and sort and whatever we were doing in our Lego rooms. And at some point somebody said, we could put this on YouTube because we're having laughs, we're having a good time, we're talking to Lego. We thought, let's just put this on YouTube, let's just
share it. Yeah.
And it seemed to do well. People liked it. We had some regular viewers who were showing up with us every week, and so we've kept it going. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And what times do you guys usually stream for people here who might want to tune in?
It's Mondays and Thursdays at 8. You can at least catch us once a week at one of those times and everything. But usually we're on Mondays, which is just general talk, and then Thursdays tends to be a guest or a topic. But we also don't have much rhyme or reason for that either.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Yeah. Spur of the moment, whatever you're feeling like talking about, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Or just what's going on in our Lego world. So
fantastic. Yeah. I've tuned in a couple times, not as much as I'd like because I do a lot of streaming myself. It's kind of hard to do more streaming after 5 days a week. Anyway, but yeah, it's great stuff. Definitely tune in. Just give them a subscribe. And let's move on to the subject of today's video. The reason I really was excited about having you guys on again is because it's been over 100 episodes since the last time we saw both of you, and I think Dana was part of that crew as well. Dana couldn't make it this time, but we got the majority of the crew is here.
The good parts.
Yes, I wasn't gonna go that far, but yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. Anyway, so I'm excited you guys are here because you guys have a lot more first-hand experience with classic space than people like me who kind of discovered it later in life and were able to actually acquire it much, much later in life. But so the subject is we're going to be talking about our top favorite classic space sets from pre-2000. So that's a pretty broad selection of Lego original IPs in the science fiction category, mostly 80s and 90s. So it's going to be great. But let's go ahead and start with Mark. Which is the first set that you want to present to us for us to judge from a score of 1 to 10?
I'll just go for one of my oldest favorites from when I was a kid, the 6890 Cosmic Cruiser, this little ship. And I absolutely loved this when I was a kid because it has a lot of playability packed into a small set. It's a little set, a little whooshy spaceship, but it has the little hatch that you can open on top, put your astronaut in there, and then you can also flip the little release on top and you can pull out the rocket sled.
Oh, wow.
So you can play with this in all sorts of ways, fly it around like a spaceship, you could pop this out, zoom around on the planet's surface, or pretend like this flies to whatever, a lot of imagination and playability possibilities with this simple little set that just offers, it packs a lot into a small package. And when you're a kid, I got this set when I was probably 6, 7 years old, something like that. This is easy to hold and whoosh around and have a good time with and play with.
Yeah, it's compact size.
Yeah. So that, to me, makes this really high on the play scale and the fun sort of, kind of...
enjoyability factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, that is
So that's my first mention there. This one, for me, was an absolute favorite when I was a kid.
Absolutely, yeah. I can see these sets were designed for kids. We kind of forget that nowadays, these are designed to be swooshed around the living room and have those play features. So that's really, an excellent, compact, well-designed. I really like the asymmetrical design of the top lid, how it goes to one side versus just like up and down from the back.
Right.
So that's a fun little twist for me. I also had no idea that the whole insides of the ship came out and could like jettison and escape if you needed to. So yeah, that really brings that score up for me. That's got to be a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, it's about that for me. The only thing I remember I was a couple years older than Mark when that sank. The only thing I didn't like about it is that they went from grays and then to blacks. Some of the colors weren't exactly in scheme with each other. I'm okay with that and everything, but that's the only thing that would make me make it a 7 or 8 and everything.
This is one of those sets that I think of as being transitional because the first generation of Classic Space was these colors, your trans yellow and gray and blue. And this was when Lego sort of transitioned from that color palette to the blue and white color palette, like the Starfleet Voyager over there.
Yeah.
And like it.
And so that was a color transitional kind of time for the sets that was, it's interesting how the Classic Space sets phased in colors through.
Yeah, they evolved and changed throughout the years. That is transitional if you think about it in the timeline. So.
And a lot of people, when they think Classic Space, and now since we've had a reissue of the Galaxy Explorer and all that kind of stuff, these are the colors that are tagged in Classic Space, and they are present. But then there's these other color schemes that are, in my mind, growing up, just as popular, just as amazing. Yeah. And you kind of had your factions even with them, different teams and different missions and stuff. So
absolutely,
very cool.
Yeah. And that's the fun about those classic themes. You could kind of make up the story as far as who were the bad guys or good guys, or was that even a thing? Were they all one team? Or the different storylines that could form in your mind. So pretty awesome. But Chris, what's the first set you want to present?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and present the Alpha 1 rocket base.
Yep.
I did not own this as a kid, but this was the first Classic Space set I ever saw at my friend Mark's house. And I had Lego at the time, and I'd heard about Space Lego, but this is the first one I ever played with, and this is a copy I've gotten later. This is the Alpha 1 Rocket Base 483, and it is also packed full of playable features. When I was a kid, this radar dish, this would be when Star Wars came out, that all of a sudden there were gray parts that you could make weapons and lasers, and of course that green beam coming out of a dish, the Death Star, right?
Suggestive, yeah, exactly.
But the inverted computers in here, the playability, the rocket that you can fire off, the fuel truck, and everything. Yeah, this would lean back and you could take the rocket off and everything like that. Fantastic. This color scheme stems from the fact that Lego didn't have a ton of other colors to build from, and they had made a moon lander with the big fig kind of stuff, and these are some of the colors in general that were in there, so they ported that over to these, because this is a 3-numbered set, 3 digits, 483, so it's super old. And but this has a nostalgia value, but it's got a ton of play value. You refuel your rocket, all this kind of stuff. We're missing hoses because they dry rot and died and other thing, but this has a ton of nostalgia memory, but it also has a ton of playability, because I can remember my friend Mark going, "Hey, let's go outside." I'm like, "No, we're playing right here," and we stayed inside and had to play with this. That's right. I'm a little indoorsy. So this is an absolute favorite, top tier set for me. So
yeah,
and this one was actually my first Classic Space set. The
first one you ever acquired, right?
Yeah. The first one, I got that for my birthday in 1980.
Nice. That's awesome. And it's really cool when we're talking about sets that have 3 digits. Because it's like, even a 4-digit set nowadays is like, okay, that's a pretty old set. But that's just a whole nother echelon of classicness.
That's right. Knowing that anybody who has 19 in front of their birth date year is over 21 now, that's a little even further with 3-digit numbers.
Exactly. So, yeah. That is fun stuff. But so, Mark, what's your score on this set? What are your thoughts on this one? Especially with that nostalgia of it being your first one. So.
Yeah, the nostalgia factor for me pushes that up. I mean, for me, that heavily biased, I'd call that one a 9 out of 10 for me, simply because that was my first Classic Space set and also my first system set.
Yeah.
Because that was me graduating from Duplo to systems.
Yeah, so, the older kid bricks, right?
Yeah,
so
the big kid bricks. I was 6 when I got that, and that was like a big deal for me. So,
yeah, totally understood. I think it's pretty well deserved. If we're talking about classic sets that you think of when you think Classic Space, this is their base, right?
And it has a crater plate, which is an important mention. Is the not every set came with a crater plate. That was kind of a cool thing to get back then too.
Yeah, you wanted the environment for them to explore and do experiments and launch missiles, so that's absolutely essential.
Yep.
But let's see, my score, I think it's got to be a solid 8, just because this is an awesome set. I think I own this one as well, because I remember that double little go-kart here with the little tanks there. It's great. So yeah, fun play features. Nice little cabin for them to, little outpost for them to be in. So that's great.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 for me.
The gray air tanks that are from the front of this set have gone on to be worn by the gray classic space figure that I put together from the CMF.
Yeah.
So it still lives on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the harder colors of air tanks to find, I think, because it only came in some of these older sets, right? It's not newly released.
And it's either a bumper or a storage thing or extra tanks for your guys. You could play however you wanted that to play. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's my turn to bring up a set, and I've got a couple on my list here. Let me see. I think, given that it's on the table here, I got to break out the Ice Station Odyssey. This is set number 6983, and would have come out in 1993, so a lot later than the previous two sets we've mentioned. But
I won't say I was in college, but I was in college.
So this came out a year before I did. And it's a great set. There's definitely a lot of progression with how the figures are styled. You got printed base plate. You got some different things that are happening. Different pieces. I think these big transparent canopies were developed later, but for things like Blacktron and M-Tron. So, but yeah. This one means a lot to me because I didn't have a lot of Ice Planet stuff growing up. I had a few figures that I got probably from a yard sale, and but on Lego Racers, there's a whole Ice Planet level, and so I was living in Ice Planet on Lego Racers, and it was great. So this has a lot of fun designs, a lot of missiles, kind of harkening back to the good old days with the missiles and spaceships. So a lot of things to like. Base plate is, I think, one of the best uses of a raised base plate. I know we don't like the concept of They're taking advantage of space without adding extra pieces or making them affordable. Yeah. That's a little bit of a downside maybe, but I think it's a good use of that concept.
Yeah. The cool thing about Ice Planet, and I think it was one of the first ones to really do it, is the vehicles don't interact as much, but the rocket parts. Every set in that line had interchangeable rockets with the magnet, so you could build up your whole Ice Planet team, and they were launching rockets for some reason. And it was the 80s. We had ICBMs. And,
Cold War, yeah.
Right. And then you could take your vehicles and go gather them back up and redo the satellites and all that kind of stuff. So all the sets interacted together with a common play feature.
Had a function.
Yeah, and that was big time. Now, me being in college, it was just like, ooh, cool spaceship. Let me get the Defender, Ice Planet Defender and everything. And so I didn't have that until later, but it is a lot of fun. It's super a lot of fun.
Yeah. Defender's good too, but I think the base speaks to me a little bit more. Yeah. What score would you give that, Chris? Did you have a...
I'm going to give that, just because it does depend on some big old chunky pieces, just for whatever. That's a 7 out of 10 for me.
Hey, that's
solid.
But
I didn't have it until later. I appreciate it more now that I have a copy of it. It's a pretty amazing set.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I'm probably same ballpark with Chris. I'd give that one a 7 out of 10 because it does lean on the base plate a lot.
Yeah.
And the large dome pieces are cool, but when you look at the base itself, that's kind of all that it's made out of. Is
it's
the big
basically a dome,
pieces.
yeah. So.
There really aren't any walls or much going on there. So, but I will grant that it does have a lot of playability with the rockets, the magnets, the arm that picks up the rockets and stuff. That's all very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's gearing and stuff that things move, and I didn't realize that just looking at it. So, because the back of the box didn't list the play features. It listed alternate models back in those days. So.
Yeah.
But it is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah. Big fan of this set, and I'm still really hoping that this is around when it gets some more store credit, and I'm able to buy it, 'cause I do not have this set. I've just always appreciated it, but yeah. All right, well, let's circle back to Mark. What's the next set you want to bring up on your list here?
Probably the Mobile Rocket Transport, which
Oh,
is the
yeah.
6950. This one is a favorite of many LEGO fans, particularly from our generation, but even later, because this one is probably one of the upper echelon of classic LEGO space sets, because this one was very, very cool. And what's so great is, I mean, actually, many reasons there are great things about this set. You have the big, large-size rover. Oh, yeah, we got the hand feature here. So when you can see it's got the independent suspension going on there.
That is so
with the
cool.
wheels. That's
Oh, my
really
goodness.
cool when you're landing it on, planet My Bed in My Bedroom.
Exactly, blankets, yeah.
When you drive it across your blankets and stuff on your bed and the wheels are doing the whole thing. That was so much fun as a kid.
That's fantastic.
I drove this back and forward over my bed, and you're exploring the surface of the planet and all that kind of thing. And then You can swivel the rear. That's very cool. It has like the rocket engine on the back to imply that you might need to boost to get over some things on the planet.
Taking over some sweet jumps.
For those of us who played the arcade game Moon Patrol,
yes, this is so Moon Patrol.
This is very Moon Patrol with the rocket in the back of the thing. And then of course you have the whole rocket situation here. You've got the big radar dish on top. At the time, this camera piece was relatively new, so you could you could have one of your guys grab this off and use it like a shoulder-mounted laser gun, or you could shoot your laser from here in your imagination, of course. And then, of course, you have the whole rocket that had the hinges. Ooh, a little clutch issue there with the older parts, but the hinged parts here would lift up. There it goes. And then the entire rocket thing. Sorry, the
Brittle gray.
the good old gray. It's not clutching very well, but
Yeah, no worries.
This, it's sticking. This whole thing, of course, would hinge, and the whole rocket. You'd set this on the ground, and then there were further hinges in the back that the box would open up. You could leave the rocket, put this away, and then the rocket can blast off from where you've had it. And it had this neat little assembly on top that you could pop this off, and it's a satellite. You fold those little guys out. Got a little satellite that could do things, go on missions, all that good stuff. And since I had that set and this one, of course, I would take the rocket and make the rocket bigger.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing. So this set has, again, a ton of playability packed into one set, which is a similar theme for me. I loved the sets that had a lot going on in the set. So, this one had a lot of playability. This one has a ton of playability. So that, for me, made it one of my all-time favorites. And I think for a lot of people, it's a favorite for all of those reasons. So much packed into one set. And it's really cool looking and just has a lot to offer, so...
And it was the year that introduced the yellow spaceman, which we also refer as naked spaceman, because his suit is the same color as his face and hands.
He just got a chest tattoo.
He's got the tattoo and no underwear. I don't know. I'm just going to jump in. This is 10 out of 10 for me. When we were talking about this pre-show, he jumped on it being his instead of before I could get to it, and it's 10 out of 10. I had one originally. And then, of course, it's been in pieces, and I've got this copy probably about 20 years ago, which was a classic 20 years ago. And there's no fault to that set. It's absolutely perfect top to bottom. So, yeah. Absolutely. One of the ones you take it to the sofa, that's an asteroid, you then fly it over and land it on your bed, play with it. One of the magics about things about classic space is there's no embedded storyline.
Yeah.
It was our storyline to come up with. Now, you could be Star Wars if you wanted to, you could be Star Trek if you wanted to, or your own exploration adventure universe. And of course, in the 80s, we needed ICBMs again. So
exactly.
All that plays into making that, to me, perfect classic space.
Oh, yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 for me as well. And I think probably if you ask almost any fan of classic space, this one is going to come up at the top of almost everybody's...
Top 5 of anybody's list.
Yeah, because this one is just one of those iconic sets from that time. That's one of the best. Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning, when we started to have multiple colors of space guys, well, suddenly they need to have their at least for me and Chris being nerds of the Star Trek variety. Well, we got the different color uniforms, so that means something now. So like
you got
the red guys were kind of commanders for me. The white suit guys were just like regular staff, and then the yellow guys were engineering. That was my vibe.
Yeah,
with the the colors, what they meant.
That's awesome.
So
these were scientists. These were grunts. These were scientists to me. These were ground pilots or rovers.
Drivers.
These were grunts. So they were the black suited. Yeah. Everybody had a big job and everything. So
So you got
I know he's red.
A red in here too. So to me that says like pilot, commander kind of.
Yeah, you got to create a hierarchy and a different job for different person. Like Star Trek really embodied that.
Yes.
Yeah, the
feel
different
for sure.
the different colored uniforms.
Yeah, the red shirts would always beam down and get killed.
There you go.
Science was blue. A different vibe, but you could assign
absolutely.
it in your own way though.
Yeah. It was an open palette, and in the day we didn't have the internet to communicate our stories. We just had our own, and it was fun.
Each household was unique.
Yeah, exactly. So it was fun as we grew up. and the internet connected us to say, oh, this is what I did with Classic Space. Oh, it was pretty similar to what I did with Classic Space. So, yeah, very cool.
That's awesome. But yeah, circling back to the vehicle though, for me, 10 out of 10, just because every single element of that vehicle serves a purpose, and it's a fun purpose. So the suspension, the turning wheels, the rocket at the back, the ability to launch a missile and lift it up and release it, that everything is so functional and perfectly designed. So it's really stunning. So
Well, and there's that was one of the first uses of Technic in a system set. For there was one Technic bar for like a decorative unit in the beta base, I believe, but as part of its playability, Technic all of a sudden was in there, and you're like, oh, this opens up a whole new world of stuff you can do, and just the motions of those wheels are, just classic, super classic.
So cool. Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, how are you going to follow that up?
Well, I'm going to follow up with the only rover that probably has the ability to compete with that.
Yeah, there we go.
It is the Megacore Magnetizer, and I'll see if we can make some room here. Because this is a big thing. Now, I'll say something pretty special about this, and I did not have this one growing up. I had all the other M-Tron sets and everything. But this one adds a whole ton of everything. But one of the special things is a friend of ours, a friend of yours, Boone, a Lego Master Boone, visited our fair city many moons ago, and he had never touched one. So he and I sat on the floor like little kids, and being 30, 40, 50 years old, and we played with the Megacore Magnetizer, and it's tons of features. I think one of the favorite things is the fact that the dome that is 4 bases actually was used in a very interesting and advanced, snotted in way in the late 80s, whatever, to be this cockpit here, which then you can also access to put your dudes in there and everything like that. So probably got to be kind of rough running right that close to that big wheel inside, but we don't bother with this.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
But this has tons of playability because you can use this crane to lift off the cargo bays, and then you can lift those off and set them down. There's also wheeled vehicles that are stored in here that you can pick up with the magnets for the guys to go around. And even in the back, if you open it up, there's a ramp there, and out of that pops a little flyer for the guys to go in. All of these have magnets in it to pick up all the cargo and stuff like that, interact with the rest of the things. And these cargo bins are snotted in and everything like that. They have cargo in them. That was empty, but this one's not. But what they have in them is kind of interesting. There are tools, but there are also jetpacks with hoses strapped to them, which my personal theory is conceptually M-Tron may have started out as space firemen instead of space police, but that's just my theory, and people call me crazy. But super playability, these big chunky wheels have a purpose, not just being big and chunky. You can turn the thing, and there's a mechanism with Technic that actually turns the back wheels, which is really, really great. So playability-wise, these boxes that they collected, there is a ton of playability here that you never have to take this apart. You don't have to add to it. Just layers and layers and layers of playability in it. So this is why it's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. Just like the other one, so utilitarian. Every magnet, every element has a purpose. The giant windscreen could be a weakness, but I think it's one of its greatest strengths and an awesome use of that piece. So,
it is.
Yeah, this one, are both the rovers going to get 10 out of 10? I think they are for me. It's got to be a 10.
Saying like this is a 10 out of 10 from this generation of Classic Space, that's a 10 out of 10 from the next generation of Classic Space, where they took the whole rover idea and playability idea and leveled it up and made another iconic set that is one of everybody's favorites. There's nobody that does not like this set. This is
absolutely,
this one's knocked out of the park.
Well, and the funny thing is like Ice Planet had its base, all the things that this was the big base for M-Tron. They were mobile, they were always on the move kind of thing, and so this was the big base. And I'm fine with that. It's chunk full of pieces. It's great. 10 out of 10.
Yeah. And so you see the M-Tron as sort of a police force or an organizing force. I see them as kind of like mining, like they're doing for magnetism. But I don't know. Maybe they were supposed to start out life as fire people in space, so you never know. So.
Well, knowing that, and I brought a Space Police. Space Police was just around the same time, and this is one of my faves too. So they had Space Police, and in this line there's a helicopter, which we all know is a big favorite for Lego to do. And those hoses, I think the original concept may have been somewhere in the DNA. These were firemen or rescue kind of thing. But yeah, they're explorers, they're scientists kind of thing in my view. So, but
fun stuff. Yeah,
such a great set.
Absolutely. Well, I'll continue on. I don't think my next one's... Well, actually, no, I'm going to be a little controversial this one.
Oh,
okay?
no.
All right. You guys have an amazing appreciation for a lot of these, earlier sets. When I was able to get some space, it was on the tail end of its lifespan.
He's going to say it.
Yeah, I'm building up to it. So the set I want to talk about next is... I don't have it with me here to show it off, but it's the... Alien Avenger from UFO, and the set number is 6975. Came out in 1997, so just barely qualifies as classic space, I think. It's before the turn of the century, and retailed for $60, and it had 369 pieces. It had some gigantic quarter dome pieces or like saucer pieces. Had several layers, had a bunch of like joint arms, had little vehicles that came out of it. So they were trying to kind of keep up some of the concepts from classic space, but in a very unique and different way. I know that this is a personal issue for Chris and maybe Mark a little bit. I know you guys are probably harder on insectoids. I didn't bring up any insectoids this time. No insectoids at all. But this is one that I really love. This is the only one from my list that I own. And I did own, and I have about 5 copies of this set. I could probably build another one if I source the pieces. So I'm a big UFO fan, but I know that you guys don't like it, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys think.
Actually,
don't hold back.
That's not accurate. I don't dislike UFO.
Okay, there we go.
Despite having the bigger, chunkier parts that I think we share the opinion that that's kind of what we call juniorization of Lego.
Yeah,
because at the time, Lego had a series called Town Junior that used huge, chunky, preformed parts that we felt was like against the idea of building. Yeah. But that's a whole other tangent. However, UFO, that is actually one of the sets I purchased as an adult. Really kind of, I think maybe before I discovered the online Lego community. That was a set I was walking through the store and thought, that really looks neat.
Yeah.
And I bought that set for myself as an adult with no influence from the Lego community. It is neat. The one of the things I liked about it was that was one of the earlier sets that was actually aliens in Lego space.
That's true.
Because for so long, all the Lego space sets were just human, pilot, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's one of the ones that was aliens.
Absolutely.
That I thought was neat. It's like, oh, cool. There's actually, different alien creatures that have their own technology and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I liked that. And I thought the big saucer pieces were neat in the same way that dome is neat. So I thought that was, UFO gets a pass from me.
There you go. So scrapes by. But so on a 1 to 10, Mark, what would you rank the Alien Avenger?
I give that one a 7.5.
That's good. Thank you.
And I'm trying to recall. Is that the one that had the light element with the fiber optics, or was that a bigger one?
So that's the next tier up. The Alien Avenger was just a purely round dome. And the reason I picked that one is because I like it's just a saucer.
It's just a saucer.
Those two sets were the 2 UFO sets that I actually bought.
Yeah.
Like that one and the bigger one that had the fiber optic things in it. I owned those two because I thought they both were really cool for, they looked different and had the aliens and were really, I thought, a cool idea. So
yeah, while you mentioned the fiber optics, that's the next setup, and I don't know the set name off the top of my head. I'll probably put it up here for you guys. That one's excellent because it has fiber optics and even has some motors in there too. So that one's probably a better scoring one, but this one meant more to me. I don't even own the larger one because it's kind of harder to find. But this one was... That was my jam. So, but I know it's probably not Chris's jam. So, what are your thoughts there, Chris?
I'm 6 out of 10. And
okay,
no
that's
disrespect.
Not bad. That's not bad.
I do agree. Yes, I remember getting those at on clearance at KB Toys.
They might not have done well, but
but also the popularity of space with kids was kind of waning then, and everything. But yeah, it was mostly super dependent on those big pieces for it. I mean. The big pieces on this are part of the form.
Added on.
The big pieces on that were the form. And for me, so that kind of fell down a little bit where it gets... But yes, for us to actually have alien that weren't humans was great and innovative. And the amount of printing they did on those, on the figs and on their bodies and stuff, the helmets, on those dishes, although I wish they would have been plain. They would have been more useful for me. But anyway, so, that's why it's not lower than that. There were a lot of good stuff going on.
To like.
Yeah, there's things to like, things to appreciate. And so I do. If you would have said insectoids, you may have got a 2. But
insectoids don't hold up as well at all.
No.
Yeah.
But especially the figures and a lot of the play features and stuff were neat, and were reminiscent of this stuff. So yeah, there you go.
There you go. Thanks, Chris. That is a very magnanimous response to that set.
This is as graceful as it gets.
That is the kindest I've ever heard Chris talk about you. Thank you, Chris. All
Yeah,
right,
you're welcome.
Circling back to Mark, what's the next set we want to bring up here?
The next set that I'm going to mention, which we don't have on the table here, so we'll have to like put it up.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
hold
throw
up
a
my
picture
hands,
up, yeah.
throw it in there. 6951, the Robot Command Center, which Chris rolls his eyes at. This is one that's a little divisive for
Chris
us.
is having a hard few minutes here.
I got to redeem myself.
And the reason I nominate that one is I owned that one as a kid. So for me, that one has the nostalgia value. And again, the core of it for me was the playability of that set.
Yeah.
It had so much packed into it that it could do, it stood upright and looked like kind of a big weird robot. It had the long, bendy, snaky arms on it, which were really fun to have as a kid for, it could pick things up and do stuff. It had the top level that was a command center for your Lego guys to do whatever they were doing. The top of it had 2 of these hinged clear pieces in trans yellow. And then it also had the angled windows with the little flippable panes in them, which were really neat. It also, in the middle of it, had a little flyer that could pop out and the wings would flip up. And,
Nice.
And a little small flyer, one of those little short 6-stud long kind of things. And then the bottom of it had like a little rover that would pop out of it too. So it had like your rover, your flyer, command level. It had radar dishes. It had the bendy arms. It had all kinds of stuff that it could do, all crammed into one set.
Yeah.
So it is a weird looking set. It's kind of one of those sets that some people, like Chris looks at it and thinks, really? That thing? But
that was your response in the text group. Are you kidding me?
But having owned it as a kid,
Yeah.
and viewing it as a set that I owned and played with quite a lot as a kid, that's where it gets my kind of appreciation.
Well, I had one. I bought one. And yeah, there's a ton of appreciation. I mean, I'm looking right over there. I see the Dobby set. You know how dorky the Dobby set? It looks just like the Dobby set, all right?
It's
If you
giving
put
you
the
Dobby
two
vibes.
beside each other, this is the classic space Dobby, all right? Little
Ooh,
legs,
wow.
these big things on the side. But I will say, I thought it was kind of neat when I got one. But like Mark, and probably like most of the people who bought that set, it was a parts pack. It was everything you needed to expand your classic space universe and build your own mocks, which we didn't call them mocks at the time. We just called it playing with Lego. But you could then expand out and build other things, and it had great windows. It had great parts. It was an amazing parts pack, and those. So that's why I think I got maybe 2 back in the day, because when you had that, you had all the elements to make you some more awesome classic space stuff out of your basic bricks.
Anything you wanted to, yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Printed parts, the arrows,
the big angled pane windows with the trans yellow panes in them.
super cool.
Those were fantastic. You could put them on spaceships or bases, or those were really neat for all
And
kinds of
going back to
reasons.
Star Trek, you wanted corridors for your guys to walk down.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Oh, yeah,
that was
yeah.
perfect parts pack for that.
Absolutely. So, Chris, what would you score that one?
Oh, I'm going to give it 7 out of 10 because my friend's sitting here.
Yeah. Hey, those pieces.
A charitable set.
Yeah. No, it was just one of those that some people went, but when you see what you had in it to rebuild, there was a lot of possibilities there. So.
Now, so Chris, when you were going, really? I was going, oh yeah, that one's cool. So maybe it's the inner 12-year-old in me, but seeing that, so I'm like, oh, I that one had slipped my memory a little bit, and seeing that, I'm like, that's just this awesome, giant, ridiculous robot that could do so much and play so much, and the pieces are fantastic. Even if you don't like, a giant mech style thing, you could do so much with it. That could be a spaceship, it could be a base, it could be expand on anything. So 8 out of 10 for me. I'm ranking it a little bit higher.
I'm just a grumpy sandwich. That's
Hey,
what I'm at. I'm a grumpy sandwich.
Hey, not every set is going to be perfect for everyone.
And for me, with the nostalgia weight, I give that one an 8.5 for
Yeah.
myself, because that one, I played with that set a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of love there.
Yeah, if you had it as a kid, it can be a lot more meaningful because you enjoyed those play features in such a more vivid way. So, yeah.
All right.
What's the next one you want to
All
talk about,
right.
Chris?
Well, this is one of my absolute favorites. This is, and it has an interesting Star Trek connection. This is called the Starfleet Voyager 6929.
Nice.
It is probably the first spaceship that they did in the newer blue color scheme and everything. It also had the offset. It does have a red guy as a pilot. Has a lot of playability. You actually had to remove this tile to be able to open the back doors for the cargo pod in the back. But the cool thing is you could actually land the spaceship, back it up, and it would just grab that, and then it would pick up the cargo pod in the bottom. It's just a couple of tiles and stuff in there, which, tiles at the time were kind of a big deal. I don't know if that showed on the camera, so I'll play it right there.
There you go.
All right, so yeah, you pull up, you back the spaceship up, you could close that in, and then you could pick up your cargo, which was pretty amazing at the time. And while it's just a simple spaceship, it's very kind of 80s tile. You can even bend the nozzle down. The important thing was this glass underneath, which also was here, because your pilot could see where he was landing. And there were a lot of times you'd squint that camera eye and you could see your pilot in there as you're landing your spaceship and stuff like this. Lots of tools and everything, parts and printed parts in white, which were unusual to have. And it's just a sleek looking design. It has multiple angles and these wings and the ladders. And it makes sense that this is a pretty powerful explorer spaceship with some weapons, if you wanted to call them weapons. Lego didn't, but
radar dishes,
and sensors kind of thing. But very sleek design. Really, they thought about where the kids could grab it to play with it, and it's super tough. So this is my favorite. Maybe even it's just more the form than it is the playability in it. But it's a great whooshy spaceship for you to zip around and everything. So that is one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah. For me, Chris, this is a 9 out of 10 because if you look at it, the profile, the design, the shape of the wings, everything, how it's laid out is very. It almost looks like very futuristic and modern. It's clean, it's sleek. You can actually turn this nose down, kind of like a Concorde. That's super cool. I didn't even know they had an under screen so you could see where you were landing. That's just icing on the cake. Yeah. And then the opening, very reminiscent of the old Galaxy Explorer, but it has cargo instead of just another rover. So I like the fact that it's a little bit more practical, utilitarian. You can carry some, weapons or research or whatever you're doing. And just so great ship, great choice.
And pop the cargo crate out of there again. Sure. It's worth mentioning, the cargo crate had the shutters, the window shutters that you could open up and put your stuff inside.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. And then it's also worth mentioning that this set had 3, 4, 5 printed elements with Classic Space logos on them.
Wow.
Which, in terms of parts and having that Classic Space logo on stuff, that was really cool. Just having
absolutely.
all those different Classic Space logos so that if you had that set in your collection, you could build things and put the logos on them, and that was really cool.
Well, and also, as you really thought about spaceships probably weren't in your mind, especially watching Star Wars, they were either gray or white, right? And so this gave you the opportunity to do, spaceships in not a primary color, but a more utilitarian color, and it was fantastic. So,
but it still has a little bit of that NASA vibe to it, a little bit of that. One of the things that's neat about the early Classic Space sets is even this one with the white and everything, they had a vibe to them that was almost like, this is what NASA could be in another 50 years or something.
Future spaceships.
Exploring space with these future spaceships, and it had that sort of vibe to it and that style to it that kind of... because growing up, when Chris and I did in the 80s, the space shuttle was huge. The space shuttle launched...
Space race.
Well, that was the second generation of the space race, because after the Apollo program, the space shuttle was the next big thing.
Yeah.
And it launched in 1980. And when we were kids, that was amazing, and it was on all the TV channels, and the space shuttle launched, and that was like everywhere you went, next to the Star Wars toys were space shuttle toys. Yeah. And then Lego had this, which carried that exploration NASA vibe to it.
So absolutely.
That was really kind of in the zeitgeist, so to speak.
Oh yeah, it was a cultural touchstone.
Yeah,
fantastic. But so what was your ranking on that, Mark? You might have said it, but
I have to give that one a 9 because I had that set too, and that one got a lot of play too. Alongside this one, these two were in my
same team.
They were in my fleet as a kid. These, because I did not as a kid own the original blue and yellow Classic Space ships, because They, I think, stopped production in 1980 when some of these other ones came out.
Yeah.
So for me, I was a little too young to own those, but I did own this one and that one.
Yeah.
And for me, these two were really important for my my space fleet.
Your adventures,
at the time.
yeah. That's awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, I don't know. Let's see. What can I follow up with that? Okay. I got a good one. So this is another large ship, but I think you'll like it. It's the Mission Commander. And Space Police 1, and it would have come out in, the set number is 6986, and I don't have it with me. I don't think I've ever actually physically seen this set. That is the color scheme it would have had, though. And so retailed for $50 back in, it would have been 1989, so that is, can you imagine the price per part ratio is pretty good for that time period, but 478 pieces. It's a gigantic ship.
It is.
And it's for Space Police 1. The design of this one really spoke to me as I was looking at the classic space sets and thinking which one would really be one of my top favorites, and this one really stood out to me and beat out some Space Police 2 and other themes that I was thinking of. But so it's huge. It's got all these different modular components. It's got these little prison bars. So they're actually got some bad guy, good guy thing. It's a little bit more
the same type of little prison as this.
Yeah,
Exactly.
this was standard in all the sets. I don't have the Blacktron guy in it, but they would fit in there, and then you could haul him around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So a little more clear-cut story, which is good and bad. But yeah, this is a huge ship. It has really great look, and I hope to see it in person one day. I don't know if you guys had as much experience with Space Police as you did the classic Space, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
I love Space Police. That was end of my high school, going into college, I guess, kind of days and everything. And this is the Galactic Peacekeeper, which is one of my personal favorites. I had multiples of this.
Yeah.
And I did have the big ship and all that kind of stuff. The cool thing that this was innovative in that line was that you had two sub-themes interacting. You had Blacktron 1 became the bad guy because the Space Police were catching them and putting them in these little jails and incarcerating them and all that kind of stuff.
Pods, yeah.
So you would buy a Space Police set and it would come with a Blacktron 1 guy and all that kind of stuff. So that meant the universe was tied together.
Yeah, crossover.
Yeah, and that was kind of innovative and everything. And then the standard of pod was in every set, so that was really cool. But yeah, the design of that, they were pretty much, let's make a
giant
cool-looking, giant, triangular, awesome-looking ship, and they pulled that off. So, yeah.
That was not a set that I owned, but I did think it was really cool.
Yeah.
I had a copy of this little guy, but at the time, I think I was high school, and so for me, it was a little more distant. But I did see the set and thought, wow, that's a really cool-looking set. And again, the things that Chris mentioned, the fact that it had the interplayability between sets from having the little jail cell things, and that fun aspect of the Blacktrons versus the Space Police and that kind of thing. Was
more of a story being created for you guys.
It was really fun, really cool.
Interesting.
Because you had Futuron at the same time, and they were kind of the civilian space. Then you had the Blacktron's a bad guy, so you had to have the thin trans red line, between the good and the bad, right?
Yeah. The Lego catalog had a little scene with Blacktron sticking up the monorail.
They were definitely the bandits. Yeah, that's great.
right.
Now, so in your guys' mind, do you see the Futuron as the successors of the classic Space? Kind of like that's the more peaceful continuation of these, because the similar logo and
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Good to know that I wasn't the only one thinking. Okay, so
And there are no Futuron was great. I don't think maybe you're going to mention a Futuron, but
I got one, yeah.
Yeah. But Futuron ships started to not be as
Not quite the same
as the thing as these were. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Alrighty, but yeah. So I didn't get the two scores on that one. What do you think that was, Chris? The big Space Police?
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Sweet.
Yeah, I'd give
right
that
around there
an
too.
an
Sweet.
8, yeah.
That's a great score. It's better than Alien Adventure. So we'll keep going. All right. So I think this is it our last set here, Mark?
so.
For you, there you go. So.
Okay, so for me, you have the box here, the Galaxy Commander. This one was really cool at the time. When this came out, I got this for Christmas. The year it came out, I think, was 86.
That's a good Christmas.
Yeah, this one for me was a big deal. At the time, this was the biggest Lego spaceship that had been made.
Yeah.
Had, again, a lot of playability to it because it had the forward section and the back section where you could separate this forward section. You lift up that little space logo there. It was on a hinge that kind of locked onto the back. and you could slide that section off and have your spaceship here that you could fly around. And the rear section became a lander. It had these little rocket engines under it.
Yeah.
And it became like a lander that would drop off on the planet. And then this little piece in the back, this rectangular brick in the back, was a little laboratory that would slide out of the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could hinge open the laboratory. It had computers inside. It had a little door in the back that your space guy could do experiments and scan things with the radar and then do their stuff on the
Lots
planet.
of scanning.
While this big ship, these were a whole bunch of lasers.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's pretty
this
obvious
thing,
with this one,
you know,
actually.
Heat ray lasers. We had names for all the colors.
It's got it has 8 transparent things on the front for all kinds of laser action.
lasering, mini laserings.
Yes, this one had the firepower. Yeah, this is great.
And it had the dual cockpit in the front with hinging canopies. That was super cool. It also had the transparent inverted piece like the Starfleet.
Yep.
It had those underneath there. And then, of course, the laboratory thing that could come off and make a command base or whatever you wanted to use that for. This one had a lot going on. It was big. It was impressive looking. It was cool looking. So this one, for me, this one's probably 9.5 for me. This one was really cool. I played with it a lot, and it was like a big Christmas, wow kind of thing, and a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for me too. I didn't have it as a kid, but it was one of those you wanted to have as a kid. But when I was 15, it was getting a little weird to go get Lego. I still did, but I didn't get anything that big. I did get it later, and really appreciate how playable it was. It's got 2 rovers. I mean, it comes with a base plate, landing plate with all the landing lights on it, and all this kind of stuff. So just
a lot going for it.
Oh, a ton going for it.
It did come with a little couple rovers, but for me, these rovers were kind of basic and secondary.
Yeah.
But they had the little balloon tires, so they were sort of fun too.
Yeah, those were fun. Yeah. The only knock I would give to it is the fact that they put a wing like behind the engine, inside the bell of the engine, which was kind of weird. Although you pretended maybe that's how they directed it. Yeah.
It had vectored thrust.
There you go.
Your mama's vector thrust. Anyway, but no, it's super, super, super amazing. The thing that I appreciate the most is that a lot of Lego Space didn't have is the astronauts were airlocked in. It was sealed. The canopies were sealed. There were no holes in there, and even the base was sealed pretty much, which was not always the case, which always kind of bothered us and everything. They were sealed in here, but not in here. The deadly space air can get in.
Exactly.
But they could. That was important. That those guys were in there.
Airtight.
So they could have ridden in there without their air tanks. That was important. So.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this set is really cool. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, not a 9.5. The reason being is because as awesome as all those lasers and play features and stuff, the design is a little bit more chaotic from a distance. And, if you don't have that nostalgia, looking at some of the smaller ones, they're a little bit sleeker, maybe a little bit more purposeful. But I love how there's a couple things that this reminds me of. First of all, you got the double cockpit. Really cool. It reminds me of the Galaga game when you get the other flyer and you have 2 of them.
But when you have your space fleet,
Yep.
you can see why this one appealed to me, because it looked like these guys were in the same fleet.
Exactly. It's all kind of unified look
That's
to
a
it.
Star Trek thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's another thing, Star Trek. It's the separable kind of weapons forward front, and then you got the civilian side. So it's got that. It reminds me of the Next Generation with the separating saucer, which they didn't do that often, but it's got that really cool concept, and it's got a whole laboratory back there. So 9 out of 10, one of the best sets from that line. So very cool. Now, Chris, what's the last set you want to bring up here?
I'm going to bring up this little space probe, the 6870 space probe launcher, just because this was one of those, if you're begging your mom for this, and she's going to say, well, how about we try this today?
There you go.
Okay, but
let's start with this
that's
one.
right. Let's let you do this. So this was a great set, super playability. A lot of people dog it because there's not 2 figures in it, and I get it, because the 6871, which was an upgrade of this, did come with 2. But this guy pilots this little vehicle out. He jumps in. The thing pivots up, and then he rockets off for an adventure. And the use of tiles here and the chair piece here is fantastic. You can park this out there, fly this guy around for adventures, maybe come land back on it. And it's pretty simple in its design and everything of how it works, but it's super effective. That sled and the little angles at the bottom. This was just, the dream of being on the moon, going out, tooling out by yourself, deciding to zip around and explore in your spaceship. So that was one of my favorites as a kid. When Mom didn't want to splurge for this, you ended up with something like this. But Lego packed enough playability and even something like that with such few pieces that it was absolutely amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, this is more the everyman set because I don't think every kid could have had the access to these giant awesome sets, as sad as that is. But this one, most people could have gotten this if they really wanted. That could have been a feasible gift. And I love that little sled vehicle on the back because you have a lot of little flyers included for an extra play feature, but that one is just really well designed, very purposeful. It's got those cool little jets on the back. Color scheme's good, the white, green, a little bit of black, and just really like it. So 7 out of 10 for that one. I think it's really good, solid, classic space set. So, what do you think, Mark?
That one was not one that I had, but I did appreciate the little launching spaceship thing on the back. So that one probably for me is a 7.5 because I always wanted it, but I didn't actually have that one. But I did build my own versions of that when I was a kid because I had enough rover parts and pieces from other sets that I could cobble together something that did that and had the little ship that would come off the back. So
absolutely,
I have a lot of appreciation for that one.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when you look at it now, I realize what it was communicating. The gray is the utilitarian part, the ground vehicle, and that white slick. They look like two different styles of things. So you have this just grunt truck carrying this advanced vehicle, and you communicate. Just the color communicates that really, really well.
Yeah, so that's the space shuttle, and that's the kind of army truck. Almost, not quite. But
right.
That's great.
But it carries forward that the white space, like with that guy. The kind of similar theming and a similar color scheme because you've got the gray with the white, like the Starfleet Voyager.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, they're really making a clear distinction with their design here. So
but it's a little bit of that Futuron. This is a lawn chair with a rocket on it. You know what I'm saying? Which is what Futuron kind of was. And that's a little bit of that, and everything, but still, it's one of my faves.
That's pretty fun, though. Anyway.
And it's an 8 out of 10 for me. But it's still one of my nostalgia favorites.
Exactly. If it's one of the ones that you got, like, if, your mom wasn't willing to spend, a grocery run's worth of money on a big set at the time, then
if she said, we put the Pop-Tarts art and we'll get this, then you got that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You could sacrifice the Pop-Tarts one day.
Right.
But, so, speaking of, we mentioned Futuron again, the last set I have to talk about is the Futuron Monorail Transport System. And this would have been set number 6990. 1987, and it would have been $155 retail back then. And I think that was a problem for a lot of people able to get this set back then, because $155 is not a cheap set now.
That set is one that I wanted and asked my parents for Christmas. But at the time, I was getting to the point where you're too old to be getting Lego sets for Christmas.
Toy.
And I didn't get that one until I was an adult and had money and got one on eBay for myself.
Absolutely, So, but I think it's an incredible system. It's an incredible set. You got the monorail; it works great. It's truly iconic. You see it, revered all over.
Oh, yeah.
It had 731 pieces. I don't think it was a lack of pieces. It's just that expensive motor and technology. Really kind of drove the price up to a point where people couldn't access it, and it wasn't successful for Lego. So they tried to include monorail as much as possible. They ended up cutting short things like Citron, but even though it might have been a little too expensive for the time, and just like for what it was, and just kind of a little too ambitious, I think it's really exciting that Lego did produce it, and we got to see it. And even if you have to really save up nowadays to get one, it's still a thing that exists. So
it was great. The monorail was really cool. It had the little station that you could stop at that had the little gear-driven elevator that you could put the cargo crates from the monorail on that little elevator and lift them up into the little station building thing that it had.
That's cool. Yeah,
that was neat.
Yeah, Lego had to outsource those motors and the tooling for all that, and the pieces and stuff like that. So it became really, really. It was not cost effective for them to do monorails.
No, the track must have been hard to make too.
Yeah, and none of the gearing on that motor matches any Lego gearing whatsoever. So that's why nowadays it's treasured, because you got to get monorail track to run a monorail on it.
Yeah, or the
that's
engine,
specific. Yeah. But this was one of those things that when you said 87. So I could drive in 87, and I would drive to Toys R Us, and I didn't have a ton of money to buy a Lego set, but I could go and stare at that thing on the display model in the little glass, and it's like, dude, that is the spaciest space I have
That's
ever
so
spaced,
cool, yeah.
right? And I did finally get one later on, and everything, and it's an amazing thing, and it's fun to still include monorail and Moonbase because it has that charm, and it's space train. We get to have something move and connect cities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's 9 out of 10. It's just one of those iconic Lego sets, but it's also well done. They didn't just phone it in. They put playability in to make it purposeful and everything. So yeah,
all the monorail systems are really nice sets. They kind of have a purpose. They have utilitarian functions, but I don't know how many people were actually able to get them back then, just because of that high price point. So
yeah.
Because both of you guys were pretty diehard space fans. It's like that's just way out of budget. It's like you just can't really justify that at the time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, for me, that one's a 9 out of 10. I was really, really lucky that I got one off eBay, and I don't know how I got it to this day, because it was a set owned by an adult collector who still had the box in really, really good condition. The figures' joints were tight because this was like, again, an adult collector owned it, displayed it, and then put it back in the box and put it on eBay. And somehow I lucked out and got it, maybe because it was a weekday auction or something, but I got that, and I only paid like $120 or something.
That's great.
Like,
That's
it is my all-time best score on eBay, for
Absolutely.
Lego collectible anything. And I still have the box. I keep it up on a shelf at home. The monorail gets used in our Moonbase displays. I bring it to shows and use the monorail. And that one's fantastic.
Yeah, such a great set.
It's really cool to hear the stories about you guys, at least seeing it at Toys R Us and being able to know about that set when you were growing up. Because I look back and I'm looking at the old catalogs. I'm having to dig through the old photos online and stuff. So it's cool to hear that firsthand experience. And I really appreciate you guys coming all the way down here to the south side to film this with us. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge and passion for this awesome sub-theme of Lego. We love it, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to go over and subscribe to Old Gray Bricks and check out some of their streams because they have great content. They have a fantastic time. It's just like this, but different themes every week. So
And more mom jokes.
Yeah, more your mom jokes, exactly. Yeah, take care, guys. We'll see you next time. Mandy.